Hello, everyone. You're listening to Truth Cat Radio at truthcatradio.com. The current time is 8:01 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's East Coast, USA. Although I myself am broadcasting from Chicago, USA. My name is Richard Kary, and this is Beyond the Matrix. Well, tonight we have Stephen Christopher, who's here with us. We're going to be speaking with him about his debut novel. Stephen is a nationalist author, and he's a social commentator, having witnessed recent furthering of nationalism, nationalist movements across Europe and surge in America as well. Combined with the fact that Stephen has had a past of writing multiple short stories on this topic, but Stephen has now released his first book. So we're going to be getting to that in just a moment. I do want to thank everyone who is tuning in and remind you all for a moment that we are completely listener supported. We do not do any sort of corporate advertising. We're not monetizing. All our archives are free. But that being, we completely rely on your donations to keep everything running here. So if you can, please help out a bit and support our station. We have a support page on our station website, truthcatradio.com, and PayPal is accepted. A lot of people like PayPal as a convenient, hassle-free option. Any little bit helps, folks. A lot of times, people have just a tiny little bit to spare occasionally, and certain weeks of the month, certain months of the year. So please, no odd amount is beyond being well appreciated to help everything. And sometimes it's just barely keeping everything going. Please also be sure to refresh your screen in your browser. If the sound goes out or if you start getting a repeating loop of some words and sentences, or just the sound going out completely, we are getting attacked a lot on our server. Actually, as a lot of people who start breaking through and getting heard in the independent media, the corporate establishment loves to attack. We've been getting hit more and more as we've been progressing here. It shows that we're making a difference, though. But please refresh your browser. If you hear silence or, as I said, something that just keeps repeating, if it happens again, do another refresh. Sometimes they'll do a couple in a row to throw a bunch of people off. But it's just one of the things you'll notice here and in a lot of the independent broadcasting. It's something we have to deal with. So yeah, please be sure to do that and support us with any little bit that you can. And also, please like our pages and share our pages and our links. We have a Truth Cat Radio Facebook page and a Truth Cat news group, Beyond the Matrix page, and we do a lot of our promotion that way. So please help us out. And all of these independent voices. If anyone wants to call in, has any question for Stephen, like to comment on anything later, the call-in number will be 714-598-3125. That's 714-598-3125. If you want to join us on Skype, you would have to call Stephen D. Kelly, message him first, and let him know you wanted to call into the show, and he can connect you. Okay, and once again, please help out with whatever you can. As I said, our guest tonight is Stephen Christopher, and he is here to discuss his first book. He is a nationalist author and has written multiple short stories on the topic. Stephen has now released his first book, a racially aware, post-apocalyptic sci-fi novel entitled White Survival. We will expand upon why this topic must not be censored or stigmatized. we are to truly maintain diversity in the world, to preserve all ethnic, cultural, and racial groups. No double standards or hypocrisies against white people are permitted. This fiction novel gets to the core of our current struggle regarding identity politics and nationalism, and I'm very happy to have Stefan with us. Stefan, hello. Can you hear me still okay?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, quite well. It's a little bassy. You could maybe speak slightly less strained, and it would still probably sound fine. But yeah, you sound good. Well, thank you for the late hour. I asked you to have to be here. I know your time zone. It's about what 1 o'clock in the morning, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, thank you for making arrangements. I know with a lot of the people in England and in Europe, but it's a bit of a hassle. But we do appreciate that, and to get you heard, to an audience that wouldn't normally get to hear your points of view.
That's okay. I usually stay up fairly late anyway, so it's not really a huge not really putting me out that much, so it's fine.
Great. I am really interested in discussing this topic with you and this book. I mean, it seems like a very good time in the world, I'll just say, because I don't know, I see this issue and the fight against globalism as also being very strongly related. And these are such hot button issues in so many ways in the current time period here. But maybe just to let the audience get to know a bit about you, perhaps you could introduce yourself and maybe share a little of your background with the listeners.
Yeah, well, I'm 34 years old. I'm from the southeast of England. I live in the northeast. I've been a writer for quite a few years now. Before I did this, I did a lot of copywriting. I've written about lots of different things. I've written about travel. I do video game reviews. I've also written on political stuff. I used to be the editor for the British National Party's website, so I did a lot of writing on there. And I used to be very active in the party as well. Back when it was more successful, I did a lot of leafleting for them. I've been a nationalist for since my early 20s, I think. And now I'm trying to get into doing fiction writing as well.
Great. And you mentioned that you were part of the British National Party when it was more successful. I'm really not that familiar, so perhaps you could explain a little more about how it's changed or how it was then and since.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, in the last few years, it's really gone off the rails and shrunk to pretty much. I mean, the party is still functioning, but it's pretty much non-existent these days. It's gone back to being the micro party it was when it first started up, unfortunately. When I was involved with it, I started getting involved actually doing leafleting in 2009, I think. And then the party was contesting the European elections. It was the elections where we actually got 2 MEPs elected, which is kind of like the biggest moment for British national politics ever, basically. But after that, the party made a lot of kind of bad decisions internally. It was attacked a lot from the outside as well, undoubtedly. But there was some bad decisions made. It's kind of the head of the party, and over the next few years, it lost a huge number of members, and it hasn't made any recovery from that. It's kept losing members, and there's hardly anyone left in it now. And unfortunately, like I say, it's scarcely more than a micro party these days.
I wonder if it had, people infiltrating to steer the direction along the way, to discourage people, to just make people disillusioned, disinterested. I don't know if you noticed like attitudes changing. I mean, I guess you kept up with a lot of the. Well, I suppose it has like forums and chat rooms online as well, all along. I'm sure you had noticed the change in energy in those sort of environments as well as any in-person gatherings.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about infiltration. I mean, something like that is obviously it's incredibly difficult to prove. I mean, there are examples of that happening, like proven examples of that happening in the past with the British National Party way before I was involved with it, and also in other nationalist parties like the NPD in Germany, for example. That those sort of things have been proven that they happen. I don't know. A lot of people put those accusations out towards certain people. I mean, I don't really think it's productive to do that unless you actually have proof of someone being a state operative or something like that. From my limited experience, working for the party for a short time, I would say that there were some bad decisions made employing certain people who were like at the core of the party, and I don't personally think they're state infiltrators. I think that it's more like they were just not great at the job, and just some of them were kind of very impersonable people as well, and it drove a lot of people away. I don't know about the infiltration thing, but I think a lot of mismanagement, a lot of people in the party didn't like the leader Nick Griffin as well for a lot of reasons, and it caused a lot of kind of factions in the party.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, no, I can understand that. So, yeah, you saw it kind of reach its peak and then kind of dwindle considerably since then, and I guess that was the primary movement that you were affiliated. But you've written some short stories on this topic leading up to this novel. It's definitely been something that's been building in momentum, in your mind, something you felt you needed to comment on. So, I mean, yeah, perhaps you would like to talk about how the motivation for the book emerged.
Yeah, I mean, really, the motivation for the book was that I've read other pieces of white nationalist literature, and things like "Hold Back This Day" by Ward Kendall, for example, "Camp of the Saints" by John Raspail, and I really like reading them, and I wanted to create more of it because there's very little such fiction available, and because there's so little to read. I mean, one of the few ways to make more of it is to write it yourself. So that was really the main inspiration behind it. To try to contribute to this kind of small subgenre that I like reading myself.
And for someone who's not at all familiar with these concepts, what would you describe it as? Well, also, I suppose just the your interpretation of how this embodies the nationalist movement, but also just the the book's message. For someone, as I said, who isn't really that familiar with, or perhaps has just heard all the wrong things from much of the propaganda in the world.
How would I describe it?
Yeah, I
Well, I would describe white nationalist literature as a whole as being something written from a pro-white point of view. It's something that isn't. It differs from the mainstream because it isn't. Well, it's free of political correctness. It's free of anti-white rhetoric and propaganda, and therefore it's something that someone who is racially aware already can read, and they aren't going to be, they aren't going to be bombarded with this anti-white PC propaganda. They won't be repelled by that. There won't be some nasty surprise lurking over the next page, where they're called a racist or something like this. It's something they can just sit down and enjoy, with a clear mind.
I could also see it as helping to shed light on some of the hypocrisies that can exist in the world, really. I mean, when you take a step back, to look at things as if you were, an alien from another planet visiting, and to just, see and compare how different things can be treated, how different issues, depending on race, will get treated in the media or in political decisions, and well, this immigration for one, it's had such an impact. And well, I don't know. I mean, we see so many double standards. It just seems like, yeah, a fiction novel like this can really let a pair of fresh eyes, look at the topic.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Well, I mean, a lot of people don't understand why this subject needs to be brought up. I mean, people will label you as, a hate, mongerer, or a racist, to talk about white identity, or any, nation predominantly white or of European descent, at preserving its culture as seen as racist. But I mean, these are ridiculous double standards. And I mean, well, a lot of people don't realize, I think, just who's can be behind a lot of this. I mean, it's not so much the voice of the people when we're told, through the media, that this is the opinion. I mean, we're having a lot of people censor a lot of responses to immigration. I know. Have the immigration issues impacted your need to write this book? Has that been a factor for you?
Yeah, and definitely. I mean, Britain is being subjected to just a huge wave of continual waves of immigration, particularly non-white immigration, as is every white country, basically. So, and I think everyone in our country should be concerned about that.
It seems like it's even a more difficult topic to cover where I am here in America. But I mean, where you are, it's a country where a very specific nation of people, ethnicity, have claimed ownership to the land, and we have a lot of European nations with similar situations. I don't, as I said, think people are aware of just how much effort and money is poured into changing public opinion just to get have gotten a lot of these immigration waves started in the first place. And well, I also think people, believe what they're told about, where all these people are coming from, who these people are, we're told it's all these displaced families and children. We're told it's all from certain countries, which it is not at all restricted to. And well, just the amount of impact it has, and the culture clash is something they just insist on keeping from the public. But everyone believes that it's very benign motives too, and I have certainly found a lot of information to the contrary. Without giving it away, because I know we'd like people to read the novel for themselves, but so without giving away too much, I don't know. Would you like to just loosely describe it for them?
Yeah, sure. So White Survival is about a group of white men and women who are part of an organization called White Survival. And basically they see these huge demographic changes taking place in Britain and across Europe. And because they also see that there's no viable way of stopping it, there's no political party, for example, that has any chance of success in their eyes of reversing this tide, they decide to take a more drastic action, which is that their organization, which is funded by this millionaire named Randolph Wallace, he pays for this underground facility that they go into, they hibernate in. He pays for these the researchers this cryotube technology that they can freeze themselves in, and then their plan is to, in 1,000 years' time, come out of these tubes and just assess the world and see if it's possible for them to live in again. Unfortunately, 400 years into that time, they're attacked and the base is severely damaged. And when they emerge back onto the surface, they realize that the world has been completely destroyed in a kind of nuclear holocaust. But because of the destruction that the base has suffered, they have to venture out into this world and attempt to find this other readout, this other base, supposedly also inhabited by white survivors, in order to work with them to try to survive in this world.
And so it kind of shows, I suppose, when desperate times and conditions arise on a planet, it can naturally lend back to more of a tribalist way of life.
Yeah, I think so.
And I mean, yeah, it's really, I mean, in that sense, it really comes down to the race being an extended family of sorts. I mean, when you have so little resources and so much danger, and such a post-apocalyptic would be a perfect example, the sort of situation and environment where you could definitely see this sort of thing. I mean, we'll hear prophecies about this sort of thing too. I mean, when a lot of factors can make stress factors build. You can see people more inclined to I guess group according to their own, in a sense. I guess it's a survival mechanism, instinctive to some extent. But I mean, I don't think enough people have thought about this enough. So it sounds very interesting. And you are just self-published currently. You're still seeking a publisher. Is that correct?
I just self-publish it through Amazon. It's just kind of the easiest and quickest way to do it, really.
Okay, yeah, just hassle-free, and you just plan to remain independent at the moment.
Yeah, basically.
All right, brilliant. Well, I hope everyone does want to check it out. Yeah, but I do think a lot of people though still have trouble. Well, you mentioned it's primarily for someone who's already been sold on these concepts, so to speak. Who understands the rationale of a lot of these principles. But how about for the people out there who who are on the fence or don't know what to think, about a lot of these issues? They can ask why this topic has to be brought up at all. Um, they'll just say that it just seems racist or hateful, to address this topic, at least as a white person for some reason. I don't know if that many people realize just how much of an agenda there is to maintain these double standards. But I mean, there really is a well, I mean, there's no other real way to put it. I mean, there really is a white genocide of sorts that's underway now as we speak, and a lot of this immigration, I just think, is the most recent and boldest step in the process. But I don't know, that's the way I would see it. I really don't think that there's any other way too. When you look at the contrast, the double standards. Let me talk about some country in Africa or Tibet or somewhere preserving their heritage and their people, seeing a future for their people and preserving their culture. It's applauded. But you bring that up for a country of Europe, for your home in England, for example, and it's demonized. I mean, surely more people have to be realizing that this isn't all just by accident. That this is premeditated. That there are people behind these agendas. I don't know what is the average response that you get from people, regarding how random, these sort of double standards tend to, just how frequent they tend to be. The potential for randomness or not.
Sadly, I don't think a lot of people do understand the hypocrisy, or they don't see what is happening as deliberate, and they don't see what is happening as what is effectively going to be genocide against our people. I hear a lot of people often say people are waking up. I've heard that for quite a while. To be honest, I don't see a lot of evidence for that, unfortunately. But maybe a little with the kind of the alt-right and a lot of young people being involved with that. Maybe there's some extent of awakening there. But otherwise, in the general British public, for example, I don't see many people wake up to this thing at all, unfortunately.
Yes, I agree. Here in America as well, on this and related topics, there may have been a soft awakening that made some people aware of some immediately apparent factors, but then mostly fall back asleep, on a lot of these issues. As far as the bigger picture, yeah, I don't know. It can be a bit discouraging, but I mean, it's been a number of years that you've been affiliated with, keeping up with these topics at least, and the time you've been aware of the nationalist movements and the organization, the British National Party that you were a part of. I mean, I know you've seen surely a build, at least in current times, with the resistance to globalism and immigration, and I think more people are seeing the connection there, right? But they still buy the idea, I think, of the the immigrant, the refugee, being this helpless person who needs our assistance and who would never wish harm on anyone, and whom no one would displace with anything but the most benevolent of intentions. And I think that's the real issue, really. People don't want to believe that there are hidden agendas, and maybe that's where we're stuck, right?
Yeah, I think people are very they're very resistant to believing stuff like that. They're very resistant to believing that the government is not their friend, is evil to them, is not protecting them, because it's a very uncomfortable thing to have to contemplate and admit. Um, and yeah, I think people's perception of immigration is very easily manipulated. I mean, very easy for the media and the government to play on this idea of immigrants being victims. They push that all the time through the media, and sadly, the general public seem to be very easily manipulated by whoever has a grip on the mass media. And unfortunately, the people who have the grip on the mass media are people who are opposed to us, and it's very difficult. Even with lots of kind of alternate media, when it's smaller scale, it's very hard to break through that and break that program. Even in like the current age with YouTube and things like this, as most people sadly still believe what they're told by the mainstream media.
Yes, I mean, all too often when a topic is finally revealed in one of those, well, I really like to refer to it as the corporate media, as at least not giving them as much credit because they really are losing viewership, but some people will still give that more credit. When something finally comes out, in those channels of information, when it's been in the independent media, revealed for months prior to that, without some of these people still feeling like it has any credibility. So yeah, I mean it. I mean, I don't know, people who, well, like you say, they're willing to believe some things, but it's just too much to take in, but the whole structure could really be set up against them, and they're not ready to deal with that.
Yeah, and yeah, I agree. Mainstream media probably isn't the best term. Fake news or uh, Lügenpresse is a good term as well. It's probably more appropriate. And people still believe what they're told, even when there are examples of how the media lies or how it's biased or so on and so forth. People go back to believing it the next day anyway.
And we have so many stories that are shaped for the public when it comes to any crime related to immigration. That's been completely, of course, hidden from the public. You can't mention what the race of the person is in any news stories. If a crime is committed, a lot of these rapes, it's really ridiculous how much the courts and the law seem to be favoring the perpetrators rather than the victims. And I'm hearing a lot of accounts in multiple countries where I don't know, this desire to keep the view of immigration a positive one is really out of control, and I can't see how much longer it'll be before just all the local authority figures are even fed up with it. But I don't know. I mean, it's really they're really trying to. I mean, there's really a population replacement at work here. I don't think people have realized just how much the statistics of the immigrant population compared to the native population has already changed, and in a lot of countries, including your own, Germany, France, Sweden. I don't know. What sort of, do you have any numbers that you could share with the listeners?
I don't know any numbers off the top of my head. I used to follow this very closely back when I used to do the web editing for the BMP. That's kind of your job. To be honest, recently I don't follow these the specifics of such things as much. I really am repelled by kind of reading any a lot of news articles these days because they're so depressing, and it has this kind of effect of just kind of pushing you away from it because you kind of know what's going on anyway without going to the websites and reading the specifics, reading all the horror stories about what's happening
Right.
to our countries on a daily basis. But I mean, the demographics of Britain, obviously, the white population is shrinking continuously. I mean, we let in, it's like 500,000 immigrants a year, and that hasn't changed. Doesn't matter which party gets elected. You know, Conservatives get elected and they say they'll reduce it, and people believe them, and then they obviously don't reduce it. It's just the same. And I mean, there obviously is this population replacement is at work, and I think some people see it, and some people don't. But some of the people who do see it, because they're told on a daily basis that it's a good thing. It's a good thing for us to become quote unquote more multicultural, which basically is a code for fewer white people. And they're told that their race doesn't matter, or race doesn't matter, and therefore, if they become a minority, it's not a big deal anyway, and they shouldn't say anything about it. And if they do say anything about it, they're demonized by being called these words, and then they can be potentially persecuted by losing their job, even be put in jail. And sadly, I think most people are just cowed by that, and they therefore don't resist it at all.
Yes. It seems like they buy into a lot of the guilt propaganda targeted against white people. Like I know here in America, the history books, of course, are very much, doctored these days to a certain perception as far as how the white people of America are all to be seen as these evil, hateful slave owners, and we're shown just all of these inaccuracies actually, and a lot of the actual historical events to help suit the current agendas. But there's also a lot of propaganda I know in Europe, actually even encouraging race mixing in younger people. That it's better if the young European girl dates an immigrant from the Middle East or North Africa rather than someone from her native country. That she'll be doing more good for society if she makes that decision, right?
Yeah. I mean that kind of propaganda is everywhere. You can't really you can literally have the TV on for more than a few minutes without seeing something like that. It's so constant, and it's the reason why I don't really watch television or anything like that anymore. I don't engage with it. It repels and repulses me too much when you're able to see this kind of thing. Once you can actually, watch a television program and see the, how someone has manufactured this by saying, okay, we need this person to be black and this person to be white, and they themselves being very racist if you like, in the way they cast the television program in order to brainwash people into accepting this multiculturalism, which in itself is a step towards white genocide. When you see that, when you can see that programming, you don't you don't want to engage with anymore because it is so repulsive.
Yes, it is even the race that is like the least resistant really to race mixing. I mean, yeah, there can be a lot of people from other descent, like African descent or Hispanic, who may have bits of other race in their genealogy, but you wouldn't really even notice it, and it kind of blends into their um, well, the look of them and their family, where you wouldn't really be able to notice any difference. I mean, the white race, you will actually have it go extinct as this multiculturalism tries to have like one single, eventually, ethnicity where no one has any cultural heritage or background as a final goal, at least among the people who are kept to do all of the busy work, are kept in indentured servitude. There may be some at the top who are still allowed a lifestyle other than this, but I don't know. I think this is the actual goal. And well, I brought up globalism already, and yeah, I just wanted to see what else you might have to say on how that fits in, because I really do see these nation states as being a fundamental threat to people who are for this globalism, which is ultimately like corporate totalitarianism for a goal. And I mean, anyone who has a strong identity and sense of who they are, their ethnicity, their nationhood, is going to be more likely to resist, to be someone like with this whole push back away from the EU. Congratulations, by the way. I know the EU still wants all your money, but yeah, I know that's a ridiculous issue right now. The EU still wants to keep taking payments from England, even though they are leaving the EU, because yeah, they can't afford it. Germany's overtaxed right now, but no, you've at least managed that much for your country, and I think a lot of these other nations are still trying to accomplish the same thing. And well, it is responsible for a lot of the immigration policies, right? I mean, there are actual quotas from the EU that each country receives. I don't know if it's relative to population or wealth or different factors, but
yeah, well, yeah, I mean, getting out of the EU I think is a very important first step in securing our borders again, and trying to resist globalism. I mean, it is just a first step. That's the thing. There is a lot of immigration that comes via the EU, but there's also a huge amount of immigration that comes, from the rest of the world, which is all primarily non-white immigration, which is kind of the major problem. And getting out of the EU is obviously a good thing. It's also a good thing just because we gave billions of pounds every year to the EU, and obviously for the privilege of having lots of our laws made abroad by unelected bureaucrats and the like. So obviously getting out of it is a good first step, but it's ultimately meaningless unless you have a government in charge of your country that's actually going to stop immigration, and ideally repatriate the non-whites that are here already. But I mean, it is a good step, and hopefully I'd like to see other countries manage to do it as well. I don't know if Marine Le Pen is going to be elected soon. I hope she is. It looks kind of difficult if you look at the polls. Whether she's going to be elected or not, because for some reason the French people seem to want to kind of gang up on her. There's all these parties pulling together the same thing they did when Jean-Marie Le Pen was the candidate a few years ago, and kind of prove that they're all the same, and all the so-called socialists and conservatives and communists all join the same party and try and block the nationalist candidate from becoming elected. I guess that looks like it might happen again, but if she got elected, I think France would most likely leave the EU, and then I think that hopefully the EU would collapse, and I think that would be a very good thing for European nation states, and a big setback for the globalist agenda.
Yes, I know the establishment is throwing a lot of money at her competitor in the election, and well, a lot of people are expecting there to be a lot of election rigging against Marie Le Pen. Just as they fought hard to try to keep Trump out of office and get Hillary in there. Even though regarding a lot of policies, it seems like they're still getting their way a bit with Trump now. Clearly, Hillary was the establishment's candidate, and there was a lot of election rigging here. And in her favor, we expect a lot to be against Le Pen for the same reason. I mean, yeah, it sounds like she has a very strong stance against globalism, which is definitely what the people need more of, and more influence for other leaders. But yeah, that makes me concerned as to how much she'll be able to be victorious. Well, I know we have a few minutes before the break, about 5 minutes before we do a station break. I don't know what we should try to fit in before then, but yeah, just regarding this globalism and just dissolving nation states. I don't know if it really is. Well, I mean, stopping the immigration for one thing is clearly already not going to be enough. I mean, when we hear the numbers in a lot of these countries about how many immigrants are already there, the damage has already been done to the cultures and to the economies. And I mean, if you still want to preserve into the future, when you project future generations and do the math on just the way people tend to propagate, to breed, you can already see smaller and smaller numbers of the native populations of a lot of these European countries, unless something is done, actually a reversal. I mean, all of these war agendas need to be stopped, get a lot of these people ultimately back to these countries. It's something that a lot of people don't want to even suggest, acting like it's so horrible a thing. But no, I mean, why should this be a permanent place of residence in Europe for these people, or in America for these people? I mean, if they're hitting hard times because of war. Now in America, it's a bit of a different situation. We can't really address everything with the same banner, but at least in Europe, I mean, I think that a lot of this should be temporary. These people should ultimately go back to their home or a nearby country of similar culture, because I mean, the culture clash is just it's just intolerable in the long run. We're seeing how much crime and destruction of just the cities in general, and they're trying to get the native populations to change their lifestyle to suit the immigrants. It's so absurd. I mean, I don't know. I can't really believe, when I was younger as a child, I would never have believed how absurd reality has been getting in my lifetime. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, sadly I would.
I mean, it just, I don't know, everything just seems twisted and upside down with the kind of policies that are completely against the native populations now. And yeah, I think that, yeah, people need to take a step back and, well, look at the longer time span, and something like your novel here does a great job at that, at just projecting into the future, and just see, well, if these immigrants are acting like this now, when you look at how much they're outnumbered, what will things be like when they're the majority? How much, how much crime and, violence and murder would they employ on other races once they're the majority? If this is what they're like now.
Yeah, I think we see that already. You can kind of get a glimpse of what it'll be for white people if you look at South Africa or something like that, where it has like the highest rape rate in the world, and you just see this ongoing genocide of whites there, particularly white farmers, and how they're murdered, and how there's just like no international outcry at all. It's more like it's just completely ignored by the media across the world, and that's what it's going to be like when whites are a minority in European countries. Unfortunately, if that's going to happen.
And then there are those who are behind all of this, which I did want to get to more in the second hour, because this globalism seems to be targeting the white races first and foremost, as far as breaking up nationhoods or any local tribalism as much as possible. It seems like even if all nations, all ethnicities in any concentration or strong identity and culture can be a bit of a threat, it's clear that the Europeans are the largest threat, to globalism, or they wouldn't be singled out as much as they are. So, I mean, I don't know. I would like to try to expand on some of the reasons for that with you, if you would, the opening of the second hour there. For the moment, we're just going to do about 5 minutes or so with station announcements.
All right, let's just do it. Let's get it over with.
If you want to just mute yourself, Stefan, and we'll be right back.
You hear that, Stefan? All right. Got to harass him for a little bit. Don't fall asleep. All right, everybody. You are listening to Truth Cat Radio, www.truthcatradio.com. We have actually had 45 minutes of uninterrupted airtime. How about that, Richard? They didn't think that you were bad news. They sure got into it with the show before you and the previous show. How about that? Amazing. Anyway, if you are listening, though, and you do lose your audio, please refresh your page. And it's just what happens when you end our business. This is one of the ways they can attack us. We are 100% listener supported, so please drop a couple bucks in the PayPal and help us pay for our server and all the other nice things like the Skype lines that we use for our callers and things like that. We would appreciate that. Also, if you are on Facebook or Twitter or anything like that, please join our Facebook page for sure, the Truth Cat Radio Facebook page. Grace, quiet. And share the stuff. Share it on your own page. And if you're listening to this show on YouTube, please, by all means, give us a thumbs up, a nice comment, and share. Share it. There, that should do it. Okay, what else? Oh, yeah. Stay tuned after this show in about an hour. Oh, of course, we got kicked off the air right now. I spoke too soon. We just got kicked off, guys. We're back. We're getting a nice heavy-duty attack after 45 minutes of peace. Anyway, so it doesn't do me a lot of good. I have to wait for everybody to come back on for the live listeners. Okay, we're back on. Hopefully everybody will refresh. But anyway, as I'm saying, after this show, in about an hour, we're going to have the Stephen D. Kelly Show, moi, and I will do my best to provide you with as much drama and intrigue as possible. All right, so stay tuned for that. I'm not going to go through the full repertoire of what we have going on all this week, but suffice it to say that we have quite a few worthy hosts that you should be tuning in and listening to. And that is what Truth Cat is, and we're happy to be Truth Cat, and we're happy to have you here. So One of these days, we're going to be up there with everybody, with the big guys. We will be the big guys. But until then, we're the ones that they pick on, so we need your help to try to avoid that. Oh, by the way, we have a chat room. If you have not visited the chat room, please do so and register a screen name. You get to there at our main page, the www.truthcatradio.com. And, yeah, we're getting hit right now. Beside the chat room, I also want to mention that you can call us 714-598-3125. If you want to call in and say hello, it's 714-598-3125. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Richard. And I want to remind you again, once again, thank you for being here. And you are listening to Truth Cat Radio.
Thank you, Stephen. And welcome back, everyone. You are listening to Beyond the Matrix. And we do have tonight with us Stefan Christopher. Stefan is a nationalist author and social commentator, and he has been here talking about his first book that he released recently, a racially aware post-apocalyptic sci-fi novel entitled White Survival. We've been getting into a discussion of the novel, nationalist literature and movement in general, globalism, and a lot of the motives behind it. A lot of interesting things here tonight, and we are glad for everyone who does support us. So yeah, please do help us out if you can. Hello, Stefan. Are you back yet from your break?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, sorry, that wasn't even quite 5 minutes for you there. I apologize, but well, thank you for sticking around. And yeah, I did want to talk more about how there does seem to be a specific focus. I think books like yours, as I said, I think it really does give a set of fresh eyes to the topic, lend a set of fresh eyes for those who haven't maybe considered the full impact. But now, when we look at the future of these nation states, your home in England and various parts of Europe, yeah, we really see a complete change that's going to be inevitable if the current numbers are sustained. The whole demographic, the whole culture is going to permanently change, or really never be the same at all, if some sort of steps aren't taken now. It really does seem to be the time period that a lot of these nations need to decide. Are they going to fight for the future of their nation and their people? Because it's pretty soon it'll be too late, won't it?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, sadly, it's getting to the point where it will be too late to do anything democratically, via the ballot box. It's got past that point in a lot of areas in Britain anyway, where it's just in constituencies in which whites just are a minority. That's usually when it gets to that point. It's usually when you kind of see a strong nationalist vote as well. I mean, that was the case with the British National Party when it would stand in these very kind of non-white areas in London, for example, and just before the balance tipped and there was the whites of the minority, they would vote in huge numbers for the BNP, and then it's kind of too late. They by that point they're going to get outvoted because there's always some whites that continuously vote for their own extinction. Yeah, I mean, it's at this point, especially in Britain, it's going to be very difficult to do anything to reverse this tide via democratic means. Unfortunately, there's quite a few European countries where I think that isn't the case, where there are nationalist parties that are much bigger and they're having a lot more success, and they could potentially be in government in a few years. And I hope that's the case. I'd like to see white people secure their own survival via democratic means, peaceful means. It would be a lot more preferable than having to go to war and have to have some armed insurrection or something like that. I think it's possible in some countries in Europe, but in others, and sadly, I'd have to probably include Britain in that at this point, given our just complete lack of real nationalist parties these days. I think it's going to be incredibly difficult to affect any real political change via the ballot box.
Yes, and I'd like to address some of the less discussed portions of the subject as well. I mean, why the white race? Why the European people? Why are they such a threat? We have a lot of the far left agendas taking center stage in the current political climates in a lot of these countries, and they propagate this myth that all people are generally the same. They're products completely of their environment, and that there aren't any differences in the brain, and therefore people will act accordingly depending on just whatever you present around them. But of course, this is complete myth based on false accounts and data that's been disproven. I know this one account by Margaret Mead. They tried to rely upon quite a bit, coming of age in Samoa, and that it turned out to be a complete hoax. Yet the left totally fueled themselves on that core belief. They refuse to believe that these differences among cultures, and are also a lot of differences among the brains of people that just aren't quite the same in all ratios, respectively in all ways, and it affects a lot of how they behave, a lot about how you even have to rule them. We have a lot of these dictatorships in a lot of these areas of the world that have a lot of upheaval, and then the dictatorships get taken out by the West, given something more democratic that never continues to work. And we always wonder, why didn't our European democracies work in these cultures? As if it's a big mystery to them. So I mean, with these far left scientific beliefs that are false are very strong to the Western, at least justifications for a lot of their war policies, even. But I mean, these people can't fit in, and you can't expect the native cultures to permanently change to suit these immigrants either. It's just completely ridiculous. But these people definitely find the first and foremost part of their agenda to be to marginalize or compromise the white races. So, I mean, they do see them as the biggest threat. I mean, we have a lot of these other people. They're coming to the European countries, They're not building similar great civilizations in their own lands to show that, they can do the same. No, they're coming and they're reaping the benefits of something built by the European people. And so, I mean, we're seeing this that must be one of the factors, the fact that there's so much self-sustainment, and even as many point out, an altruistic quality, this altruistic nature that tends people it tends the people toward things like exploring space and the recycling sort of phenomena. Just a lot of this idea of helping the greater good in different like research and contributions that you don't usually see among the non-European cultures. I mean, there's just a lot of inherent differences in their altruism as well that poses them as a particular threat to these globalists who would like to control us all. And I don't know. I think that then you're getting into the topic of eugenics, and then that's another way that people can label you with the label hate, and racist, and think that you're going to cower away, because if you're willing to state that there are inherent differences in different peoples, in their genetics, their DNA, in their brain, their physiology, and their culture, and there's no getting around that. So I mean, I think we have to first of all stop being willing to cower so much, when we get these labels thrown at us, like racist, because everyone has a right to preserve their own culture. So don't we have to stop being afraid when they throw this word racist at us?
Yes, we do. I mean, I like to think the word racist hasn't really ever worked on me, because I, kind of see it for what it is, which is basically, a shut up word. It's an insult. It's kind of a racial epithet in itself. Really, it's just an insult applied to white people, but it's more than that as well. I guess it's a method to shut them up and to try to make us not speak out about these things and not even notice these things happening to us. It's my hope that the more the word racist is used and its synonyms, fascist, neo-Nazi, etc., that it will eventually wear out and people will stop being afraid of being called it. But unfortunately, I'm still waiting for that to happen.
Yes, yeah. Well, I mean that would be a great hurdle to overcome. That's, I think, a lot of the power that is being held over these native populations of Europe. These lobbying groups, these hate groups, they're trying to supposedly eliminate hate. Of course, the agendas are far from that. I don't know. I mean, a lot of people have done research into exploring, who's behind a lot of these PC agendas, and you do see a lot of consistencies with a lot of the people who are pushing toward these agendas, and a lot of it seems to coincide with the multiculturalism, with the war agendas, with the immigration, the globalism, with the corporations and bankers who benefit from the consolation of power. I don't know what sort of groups, if any, have you implicated, in a lot of these policies?
Well, I think it's very clear that there's a huge Jewish influence behind forces like globalism and things like that. It's a huge kind of overrepresentation, if you like, of Jewish people behind these kinds of policies, which, as you say, they're directed only at white people and white nations. But there's also a preponderance of white people as well. I think you have to be honest about this sort of thing. There's some people in our movement who won't say that kind of thing. But I think you should be honest about it. And if you're gonna talk about things like, for example, blacks committing murder and rape to a far higher degree than whites, you should also talk honestly about Jews being involved in these kind of organisations to a ridiculously high degree, given the percentage of the global population.
I completely agree. When you talk about the broader topic of multiculturalism, for example, you need to ask, with a lot of these agendas, that we see who benefits. And most certainly, Jewish power benefits from multiculturalism. You know, they like to be one of a plethora of different minorities, and so as not to stand out, of course. But also, I mean, are behind a lot of the targeting of these anti-white policies. It's really staggering just how much. And the most disturbing thing is, though, I mean, most people, you know, are so in fear, you know, of what they might be labeled, that they won't, you know, bring up anyone's identity where, you know, that these people are basically camouflaged. You know, I mean, it's a group infiltrating another group, and you're not allowed to even point out which ones they are. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's similar to the being called racist thing as being called an anti-Semite. It's like it's even worse, you know. And it does have that tactic of attacking people that way is incredibly effective, and it's yeah. I mean, it's you have to admit. You have to, if you're going to confront a problem and try to solve a problem, you have to admit first what the problem is. And I think that's kind of what a lot of people, you know, even on our side in the movement, won't do. For certain reasons, they think it might make them not sound legitimate or something if they say that, if they point out this kind of Jewish control because they think they might be viewed as kind of wacky conspiracy theorists or something like that. But I mean, if you do look at the facts and you look at the, you know, the ethnic breakdown of people who are pushing these agendas, if you're going to be honest about it, it's the only thing you can really, the only conclusion you can point out, really.
Yes, I mean, I have so much data from so many sources that points out the amount of control these people have. Say in America, for example, you know, I mean, you know, just going into detail in naming the different people related to the money in the banking system and Federal Reserve, and then extending to the media, the Congress, the White House, general policies for the nation, the courts. These homeland security organizations, military, corporations, education, culture. I mean, it's basically everything. You know, it's quite disturbing when you really look at how much information is out there.
Yeah, it is. You think Jews are something like 1 or 2% of the American population, for example, yet they have, you know, all these ridiculous positions of power. You see how many are in the cabinet of any government, for example. It's you know, it's an incredibly staggering number, and I think, you know, you've got to you know, look at that and point that out if you're actually going to, you know, address these issues seriously. Otherwise, you're just ignoring, you know, the gorilla in the room, if you like.
Yes, I mean it. And if you like just cut off one tentacle, you know, others will still grow from where that one was cut. I mean, you have to really get to the source, and these people are, if they're not going to ever do that, nothing will change as far as the control and where the power lies. But yes, no, I mean, just as you have, I've been really blown away by just how extensive, in all of these areas, and with a lot of people named, very specifically. I mean, there are so many websites that do extraordinary job of data collection in a lot of these regards. And then, though, not just to see who's behind all these banks and corporations and political and cultural influences. Of course, entertainment industry, that shapes how the young people are, which affects everything for the future for the nation as well. And of course, this comes into the preserving of the race, this shame towards race mixing as well, and how much it's influencing in the culture. But but then you also go and look at the fact that so many of these Jews and Jewish lobby groups are behind so much of these plans for white genocide in so many ways, of including so many of the ways we discuss here today. So there's really no denying it. These people are not white because they're trying to kill off the white nations and are attacking the whites as a perceived threat. Their foremost threat in the immediate future. Any conglomerations of the other ethnicities they'll deal with later if they become a nuisance to their power. But the most immediate threat is definitely these white people. And this Jewish power system would love a slave race of mixed people who have no identity and just are just barely smart enough to perform all the tasks to serve the elite Zionists of their future world, right?
Yeah.
So this book, this really, I think, touches on this very well. I don't know if it perhaps doesn't bring up these people by name as far as referencing Jews in your novel, but surely it at least infers toward different control groups, I would suspect.
Yeah, there's kind of a hint in there that there's this organization in the book called Vigil, which is kind of dedicated to finding these pro-white groups and disrupting and eventually destroying them. And there's kind of a hint in there that the leader of that organization is Jewish. Of course, there's a lot of whites in these organizations as well. These, all these kind of degenerate organizations that are working against white people's interests in general. To be honest, they're the most contemptible to me. It's kind of white people who are traitors to their own people, who are the worst of all. But yeah, as you say, the preponderance of Jews in such an organization, it can't really be ignored if you're going to tackle such issues seriously. I don't think so, anyway.
And it is staggering how much the entertainment industry has promoted the multicultural and just basically the gradual thinning out of the white races. Just like you say, how roles are even cast in all of the programs that are on television and films. It's just extraordinary how it's obvious thought has gone into every one of them in their politically correct minds. Not a thing escapes them, which could possibly derail from that. They make so certain that everything has this subliminal message embedded in it.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's getting worse and worse over time as well, and um, that's something that's just kind of repelled me from pretty much all modern forms of media, which is kind of the part of the reason for writing a book like this anyway, is just trying to give people like us something which is free from this horrible stuff. Um, but yeah, I mean, the entertainment industry is, I mean, you have to kind of ask, would a people put out this kind of propaganda about them? Would they put out a constant propaganda from films and television alike, which is promoting their own genocide, if there weren't some kind of outside influence there? I mean, what kind of people would actually do that to themselves without some kind of external influence manipulating them? You don't see any other peoples doing this. You don't see any other entertainment industries in other countries, Bollywood or something like that, putting out stuff which is kind of like promoting their own genocide. It's only something that's aimed towards whites.
Yeah, and you don't see a lot of. Well, one thing I could say for some of these other nations is they're not, buying into this, being guilted into accepting immigrants. I mean, you're not seeing, somewhere like Japan accepting mass immigration from the Middle East or North Africa. They're just not going to have any of that, and no one's shaming them for it. For preserving their people, their culture. So it's really absurd when you just present something to someone like that. Well, so then why for a white nation is it so different? But yeah, I mean, everything that is depicted in the culture, in the media, and well, just when you look at the, I was mentioning the crime statistics earlier, but just the way the news will report on everything is just not really even focused on the best interests of the people. I don't know. I don't really see it being at a point where we could change, like as you say, at the ballot box at all. I mean, I almost feel like there needs to be, just something truly organic where, I don't know, like I don't, it would be hard to see. It would be just a revert to tribalism for people to just, implicate policies in their local areas. I mean, I would ideally like to see the central governments fall with all their corruption and greed and indebtedness to these money men. It wouldn't be too hard to see, but I don't know if we can hope for that to happen. They can always doctor up the books, to stay in power if it's only about wealth. So I don't know. I feel like there has to be some sort of uprising, in each area or something to invoke new national policies. These people will, they'll fight to the death, kicking and screaming. The ones who currently have the power.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I think some people think democracy is completely rigged. I think it's certainly rigged to an extent, and that there's certainly a huge bias in any of our countries, against any sort of nationalist party ascending and getting power. And the media, the establishment tries their absolute utmost to stop that. But even despite that, you get these nationalist parties that rise, and they are gaining some degree of power in some countries. And I think some European countries are savable through that process. But I think others, going by the political landscapes in those countries at the moment, I don't think they are. And yeah, I think there have to be some alternatives to that. I mean, in America, there's there's the Pacific Northwest movement, which I personally think is probably something like that is really the best way to kind of carve out a white nation within America to try to save it. I don't really see anything else working because you know there's such huge non-white immigration into America, and I was hoping that would be improved with Donald Trump's election, but since he's gotten into power, it doesn't seem like he's really doing a lot of the stuff he said he would, and he's doing ridiculous other things like bombing Syria or sending missiles into Syria for some reason, instead of doing the things that he was elected to do, like building a border wall and, you know, stopping Muslim terrorists immigrating into the country. So, you know, the political system in America is so difficult in order to get. I mean, it's a two-party system, so unless you get someone taking control of the Republican Party who's actually going to put the people's interests first and foremost, which a lot of people thought there was with Trump, but it looks like maybe they were wrong, then you aren't going to get any change through the democratic process in America. So I think realistically the only way is, you know, to survive for whites in America and in lots of our countries is through balkanization and through setting up their own nation states within those nations. But there's very few organizations like that are serious. I think there's the Pacific Northwest movement in America, but you know that sort of thing doesn't really exist in Europe, unfortunately.
And these groups are so hard to really get noticed or to get started, especially anything that meets in person. You know, I mean, online is a threat to the system as it is, but anyone who meets in person is certainly going to be, I imagine, targeted by a lot of these lobbying groups, for example. They really you know, would hate to see that sort of resistance, but that's really then what I really would encourage in people, you know, to locally try to establish your own, you know, groups who are able to perhaps even meet locally or at least online. But you know, you don't have to, if you can't find any that exist, start your own, right? I think we need everyone to do more and more. Like if everyone were contributing like we are, you know, going on radio stations or hosting for people to come on shows, we'd be a lot further along. You know, there'd be a lot less people who are not awake.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's. I mean, what we need in this country, I mean, we need another political movement that has, you know, whether it's a party or whether it's some kind of organization like that, which is actually there for people to join. Because right now in Britain, at least, there just isn't anything. You know, there isn't anything for people to join. Not everyone is a leader. Not everyone can set up this kind of thing. There needs to be something that people can actually join, be a member of, become active in, or we're just going to keep slipping into just demographic decline and eventual genocide.
And well, when you look at the kind of just strong agendas that are working against us that are in place, you know, that these aren't random coincidences. You know, all of these different things merging, you know, the attitudes imposed in the culture and the amount of immigration and just the amount of double standards reporting the news. I have a screenshot here from Twitter. This was mentioning American Jews and hashtag open the gates. joined thousands of American Jews in calling on our government to keep the gates of the U.S. open for refugees. And it was shared on Twitter, hashtag Jews for refugees. And there's a lot of this that goes on in Europe as well. I've looked at so much data actually regarding the Jewish people and just how many countries they've been expelled from, and the different years. Spain 1492, Portugal 1497, Austria 1421, Hungary 1349 to 1360, Crimea 1016, Poland 1159, Germany 1100s, England 1290, France 1306. And it just goes on and on. And and when you just look at all these policies that are just suggesting the replacement of the native peoples, and then even just the people getting allowed to make statements that are about or promoting white genocide. You'll have people stating that we need people to make sure white people die off, the world will be a better place, and they're glorified, they're not censored, they might even be promoted more in the corporate media. There have been instances of this. And then could you imagine if a white person were to say this about the blacks or the Jews, God forbid, the way they'd be demonized. But it's amazing though how much people are able to let things slide when it's anti-white, and they're not censored. Surely you've noticed a lot of examples of this. I mean, I'm staggered by the double standards that are going on with that alone these days, right?
Yeah, I think it's something that's again escalating and getting worse all the time, and I think it's really depressing just how normalized people have gotten to this kind of anti-white propaganda just in everyday life. I mean, like you say, there's these newspaper headlines that are anti-white. If you were to reverse the races, it would be a national outrage. But this is the result of whites having this inculcated into their heads for decades now, that they just kind of accept this climate of racism against them, and don't even realize it really. They don't even realize the double standards that are in play, and they're kind of brought up to believe that only whites can be racist, which in itself is a racist thing to think, but they believe it, they don't question it. And I mean, every day I see examples. I try not to be honest, because I don't watch television anymore or anything like that, because this stuff is just so rampant on there. It's like I've seen enough examples of it. I don't need to be convinced anymore that it's a bad thing, that it's evil or whatever. But even now you see such a, even just you go on Twitter or something like that, you're just kind of bombarded with examples of anti-white propaganda in the media, and sadly, like I say, most people just kind of imbibe this stuff, and they it's very deeply rooted in them, and it's very difficult to talk to someone like this who's been kind of smothered in this stuff their entire lives, to actually try to undo such huge amounts of programming is very difficult, and I think that's a huge barrier to trying to get people to understand this kind of thing. It's I think a lot of people are too far gone because of it.
Yeah, I mean they've just been programmed, a lot of them, to the point of no return, and it's just expected in the culture, for them to, have different standards for what is said about white people, and people can get away with, but would never say about other races. It's just, just strange how people feel they can't defend their right, to have a culture and identity and be proud of it. White pride alone is like a hot button trigger item. It's not even seen as a positive thing. They even just the phrase has been propagated to us, to be something negative by a lot of the entertainment industry. And of course, that's not the case at all when it comes to black pride, brown pride. You hear these things all the time, but white pride even has been marketed, if you will, to a large extent to mean something other than what black pride or brown pride can mean, and that there's no logic behind that whatsoever. Explain how anyone can justify that. That's what I would ask of anyone.
Yeah, there is no logic behind it. There's just propaganda, and then force of threats or something bad happening to you if you don't subscribe to it, and that's enough to persuade or to cow most people into doing what you want. Most people are very herd-like. The vast majority of people. That's kind of how societies work. If everyone were a leader, there wouldn't be order in a society. It wouldn't work properly. Most people are just very herd-like by nature, and sadly, it seems if you have the means of propaganda in a state, if you're able to just bombard people with this stuff all the time, they just fall in line and they do as they're told. And I guess the only way to change that is to take back power yourself through one means or another, and then start changing that messaging, and then people will believe what whoever else is in charge will tell them to believe.
Yeah, and even things that are so blatantly in their face, they'll see as though just some random occurrence, not premeditated. Like, for example, the whole phenomenon of George Soros and his influence with his money. It's unprecedented. Here's this ultra wealthy, ultra powerful Zionist, hardcore Zionist Jew who's behind all of this, anti-white genocide, mass immigration propaganda and policy making and funding, and who's also behind a lot of the agendas of Israel, of course, in all of these wars and all these war zones, basically working for the globalists, even like this propaganda funding in Ukraine had a lot of influence. So he's been everywhere basically on the globe, and you even point to that, and it's still hard to convince some people that there are agendas. It's amazing how difficult it could be to convert people. It's so hard to wait for them to convert themselves, I suppose, right?
Yeah, I've been waiting for quite a long time. I think, I think most people just wouldn't even know who George Soros was. If they don't listen to alternative media or independent media, they're not even going to know who he is. Or if they have heard his name, they'll probably, if they've been following the fake news, they'll probably have a favourable impression of him. And the media often paints these people, these Jews, they kind of paint them as whites anyway. So even if people have a negative view of them, they don't even really see that they are that they are Jews. They kind of see them as being white, as the media portrays them as anyway.
Yeah, no, you're right. That is a very big part of the issue too. Yeah, I mean, and this is one of the things that yeah, people are demonized if they even try to address or point out, just to identify, um, is in itself becoming more and more, well, even a crime in a lot of countries now, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can go to prison in several European countries for very very minor stuff. Just essentially noticing what's happening to you and noticing what's happened to your people. I think it's it's France, Germany. I think are especially bad for that, but I think
Mhm.
Britain is rapidly catching up. Unfortunately.
It's so disturbing. Where now, if we admit that um, we're aware of the truth, even that is a crime, a thought crime, I suppose, against Jewish power.
Yeah.
Well, I think we need to start calling these things out more for what they are. Um, I empathize with people who are in countries though where I mean it is a crime, um, just to try to retain some of this information. Like, for example, the anti-Semite thing. It's ridiculous how much that's becoming a crime places. And I mean, these are the kind of things we have to fight back against. Get these policies removed in these countries. I know Germany more than anywhere is is like a hotbed for Jewish power now. It's almost like just well, it's not almost like it's most certainly a slap in the face for that matter. But yeah, we haven't really brought up Germany much, but or at all really. But as far as the past, I mean, so much is distorted in the information. I mean, regarding the First and Second World Wars, what led up to them as well, for that matter. I mean, it's well known that the Jews of the world declared war on Germany years before anything started for World War II. I believe it was 1933. There were actually headlines of newspapers pointing out that Judea declares war on Germany, and it was a international boycott, basically. I mean, uh, after I mean, because of the kind of recovery that they were making, with the sort of policies and changes, they were becoming quite a threat. I mean, of course, the banking industry saw Germany as a major threat, because they were rejecting any private central bank and printing their own currency, as all of us should be doing for that matter. And I mean, just a lot of the cultural Marxism Hitler became aware of in his country, and a lot of the Jewish influence and power and control. And he actually identified all of that, and marginalized it, if you will. But yeah, of course, the vengeance is that the history books are completely distorted and written to demonize him in the most absurd way possible. And then, of course, one step further, though, with this story of this Holocaust, we have the agendas for Greater Israel to be pursued with impunity. I mean, no one can complain about the war crimes of Israel because they had this story of this Holocaust from the past, and so they can murder countless people in all of the countries and take over as much of the Middle East as they like and use the West to do it, with impunity, as I said. So, it is kind of ridiculous how much, now we have such an opposite policy. I mean, Germany is almost the strongest point in the world for anti-Semitic hate crime laws. It's like the last place you'd want to be today to be a nationalist. It seems that's how strong the retaliation has been since World War II. But I mean, yeah, that's what Hitler was really doing. You know what we're talking about. I mean, identifying that these people have this control and power, and doing something to take back your country's control and the people who are in control of things, right?
Yeah, I think that was his real crime, rather than the extremely exaggerated stories about the Holocaust, for example. And if you just do any kind of cursory reading on the subject, it just becomes very clear how ridiculously exaggerated the supposed numbers of people who died in the Holocaust, if you can even call it that, were, and just how it was. A lot of it was just kind of post-war propaganda from the Soviets and the Allies to gain public favor against Germany. And I can go into how there's so many faked photographs and things like this, and there's not actually any evidence for any of these wild numbers that are put about. But you can't, if you try to question that in Germany, you're put in jail, which kind of just kind of sums up. It kind of proves the point of the people who do criticize it. I mean, if you just want to look at all historical events, you should be open to looking into them and researching them, and because otherwise you're never going to get at the truth. But obviously, certain people don't want researchers to get at the truth for things such as the Holocaust, because it's such a strong political tool that certain people can use. And it's also something that Jews who claim to be relatives of Holocaust survivors and the like can get a huge amount of compensation for being involved with. So it's something that's not likely to be debunked unless there's a change of political power in Germany or in other European countries.
Yes, certainly. The three most important myths for the power structure to retain: the Holocaust, the war on terror, and global warming, right?
Yeah, it's climate change now, because
oh, right.
Finally had to admit that the world isn't warming anymore. So now it's just like, whenever there's a climate change, whenever there's like a tsunami somewhere in the world, it's white people's fault for having developed nations or something like this, rather than the fact that the climate has been changing for as long as the Earth has been there, because it's just a natural thing. But it kind of shows people's gullibility, that they just believe whatever they're told. Just that you can say, oh, look, there's this hurricane or something going on. It must be because of Western nations having industrialized countries. Therefore, we have to levy this tax on you, and people believe it. And yeah, I mean, it's depressing.
I'm sure they'd love to have laws in place everywhere to criticize against criticizing, vaccines and the pharmaceutical industry. Most of the big money-making corporations, basically. But anytime you see something that is actually made a law, where you cannot even question it, I mean, like this whole Holocaust law that we're seeing places, it should be a dead giveaway that, that there's something to the so-called official story, or else they wouldn't need this sort of totalitarian. I mean, it hints of desperation, really, to try to have this law for the Holocaust story. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and of course, it's the only quote-unquote Holocaust that is protected in that way, and it's really the only one that most people have even heard of, even though it's if you believe the 6 million number, it wouldn't be the greatest one. And again, it just shows the stranglehold on the media by the people who have who benefit from pushing that particular historical event. It just shows again who is in control of the media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most certainly. And so as all of these, in everything from political agenda and corporate agenda and distortion in our history books and propaganda in our entertainment and media, I mean, it's you really need a future where people are actively awake, self-aware, and enthusiastic about resistance. If there's going to be any hope of getting back to at least the sort of sovereignty we were seeing for each potential of each ethnicity, for what they happen to wind up doing with it. No, I mean, this globalism and this anti-white agenda is definitely linked. I think we need to make more people aware of just citing all these things and the Jewish power, not being afraid of the labels people will throw at us, short of prison sentences. People need to just start standing up more and being more active, influencing people as well. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it's a small price to pay for potentially saving your people and stopping a genocide, and being called a word is a small price to pay. Even going to jail for a few years is something that people should have to be prepared to do in order to stop that. But I mean, I am kind of optimistic. I might sound kind of down about the whole situation. I am optimistic that white people can survive, at least in some European countries and parts of other countries and stuff like that. I am optimistic that we will survive some places, just not everywhere.
Yes. Well, with that, we'll have to see where things lead. But thank you so much once again for being on the show, making time for us here, Stefan. And we'd love to have you back on again sometime. I did put out your contact information. I tried to with the promotion on Facebook at least. But do you want to tell everyone the best way to reach you if they want to contact you?
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me on your show. It's the first interview I've done, so hopefully I didn't I did and a lot, but I tried to do it as little as possible. So if people want to find out more about the book, they can go to whitesurvival.org, and they can there's links there to buy it on Amazon, and you can read a sample of the book before to see if you like it and think it's worth spending a little bit of money buying it. I'm on Twitter as well. My handle is antihen83 if you want to follow me on there.
Well, it's been great having you on. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I would love to have you back sometime.
That's great. Thanks very much for having me. It's really appreciate you having me on and letting me talk about these things.
Great. All right. Well, thank you very much. All right. Well, have a great evening.
Thanks, you too. I'm off to bed.
Sounds great. Okay. Cheers.
Bye.
All right, everyone. Well, that was Stefan Christopher, and this has been Beyond the Matrix with Richard Kary. Stick around for Stephen D. Kelly with the Stephen D. Kelly Show in about 5 minutes. Until next time, transcend the construct. Regards.